Hey guys, Keith Keller, Melbourne, Australia, and you have tuned into a special edition of Better Than Real Life Events. We've taken it up a notch with a couple of new features. One is we've got a really wonderful new background, which is part of the colours of the Better Than Real Life Facebook page, which is betterthanreallife.com. If you want to go and join that, we've got a QR code. We'll show you a bit about that later. We've got 5 people calling in, 6 people calling in from around the world: Connecticut, San Francisco, Dublin, Atlanta, Perth, and New York. And we're talking about the idea of what will real life events look like in 2022. Can we go to real life events? Do we want to go to real life events? And can virtual events partially make up for that? We're going to talk about a really cool article that's just come out this week. The author, we found the author yesterday and he's agreed to come on all the way from Atlanta. We're very excited about that. We've got people calling in from all over the world. You can watch the show on YouTube and on Twitter. So please make some comments there. I'll feed them into the show and you'll see those pop up from time to time. But without further ado, I really want to get into this article that we found. We found the author, Peter C. Evans from Atlanta. And it really has discovered like a 4-point plan, a 5-point plan to make virtual events work in the real world if you can't travel. We have got a site we want to show you later that tells you where the events are going on live. But if you can't travel or you don't feel safe going out or the virus is a bit out of control in your area, here is a 5-point plan. So I'm going to bring Peter into the call to talk about this idea that we might be looking at a hybrid version of events from now on. So welcome to the call, Peter, and tell us all about this cool article you wrote and what was the inspiration for it.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's great to join the conversation and speculate a little bit, but think about, where are we heading in this new world? I guess I would preface by saying that the ability to meet ground to a halt. And so there was this imperative to find alternatives. And that led to the explosion of platforms like Zoom and others. And there's been a lot of innovation over the last year. So what I think is interesting to speculate on is that is this not going to be abandoned, or is it going to be integrated into how we proceed in the future? And the thing that's interesting is that virtual events aren't like exactly real life events. You have to adapt and change. And a number of organizations that have gone virtual have found that you actually change different dimensions. One is the frequency. When you do a big event, you plan for it for a whole year. A lot of investment goes into it. You got to secure a hotel. You got to get people to buy tickets and travel and all this kind of stuff. And so there's a tendency when you do live events to want to concentrate all that effort into a very discrete period of time. However, when you do virtual events, the cost is lower and the experience is different. And so some of these organizations are finding that actually it makes sense to be more frequent, maybe shorter duration of the specific engagement, but have it more frequently. And so that means that you can have almost like an on-demand, and you move almost like to a marketplace kind of engagement.
And you mentioned that in regards to the toy convention. Yes. You want to mention that for particular example?
So the Toy Association is a really big association. They rent out the Javits Center, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's one of the biggest conference expo spaces in New York City. They typically get 20 to 30,000 people attend that event, right? So it's a big deal to organize that, get everybody together. It's like a marquee event. With COVID, obviously that did not happen. And instead, what they found is that there was tremendous demand and need for the sellers of toys to show their new wares with the potential buyers. But they also found that the interactions were different in that the people wanted this ability to meet online, but many times over the course of a longer period of time. So they ended up extending it, and now they're converting to a complete marketplace where it's like an ongoing thing. And so instead of having just 5 days, now it's stretching over multiple months. And it's converting into what they call now a social marketplace.
Well, let me bring Lippy in because she's from New York. First of all, Lippy, welcome and thank you so much for coming on the call. Are you familiar with this venue, and what would you think of this idea of having online events rather than going to a big venue in New York where it's really quite unsafe?
Yeah. So first of all, Keith, thank you so much for facilitating and organizing. You spearheaded this amazing global event online, virtual, and from a public health standpoint, totally safe. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for inviting me. I'm so honored. And yeah, Peter's absolutely right. The Javits Center in New York City is one of the largest convention centers that I know of. And interestingly enough, right now it's being utilized as a vaccination hub. And so I may be one of the people who will be working there to help facilitating COVID-19 vaccinations for New Yorkers. So, as with most things in life, I think how 2020 will look as far as virtual events, it'll be like anything in life. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. But I think the vast majority of people will be somewhere in between. I'll be honest. I think there's a lot of pros to virtual meetings like this. But at the same time, I also kind of miss the interpersonal, in-person interactions. But I will say, as a doctor and a public health advocate, it's a safe way to engage and continue social interaction, because we know that social isolation is leading to lots of adverse events: depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance use. So this type of connection, to me, I'm a big fan of it.
Well, let me pick up on what you've said there from the health point of view. In Melbourne, we locked ourselves inside for 100 days and we got rid of the virus. We actually got rid of it. We've got 0 cases in Melbourne today. And we're very proud of that. But as you said, there's some major mental issues, mental, physical, and sort of emotional issues with being inside. And these events here, and let's really play it out: Connecticut, San Francisco, Dublin, New York, Perth, Atlanta, all on the call, all in real time, all conversing with each other. This would never happen in real life because I've never been to Atlanta or Connecticut or Dublin and San Francisco. I've been to Perth, but I didn't know Doyle then. So really, we're starting a new movement of what might become quite acceptable to a large majority of people, because we don't want to get the virus. And we're still meeting. We can't hug. We can't have coffee, but at least it's something, isn't it? And I want to bring Irene in on this because Irene's was the inspiration for featuring this particular article. So tell me what you think about this article and why what we're doing here is a really good example of what's possible moving forward.
Sure, Keith. So, Peter, first of all, yes, applauds to you, because what you've done with this article, and the link is in comments here, so please share with the audience out there. So, Peter, you summarized what virtual events are, okay, and you bridged it to very vast digital capital universe each business actually owns and invests into. So you, Peter, you're talking about superstar firms that take the most advantage of this digital economy. That made me think, and that is a dangerous sensation in my
brain. Sorry about that.
Exactly. I had to bring that to Keith immediately and to Doyle 2 seconds later, I think. Something like that. Right. So, and that's how we got connected last night. So instead of me speaking about it, Peter, why don't we question you on some of the points you're making? Because they're just fantastic. Digital assets. Can you talk to us about, right? We know that we own marketing assets, that we do have multiple properties out there, right, in social media and all that. But please connect to us that virtual events, they are this kind of investment and digital capital companies now have to foster.
So the big idea is that firms grow and make returns by investing in different things. In the past, they made returns by investing in physical capital, right? You built factories and things of that nature. Increasingly, most of the value is now generated, or more value is generated, by investing in digital assets, right? Now, what I was trying to argue is that events should be thought of as part of your digital asset investments. Wow. And one of the things that happened as a result of this event and the pandemic is that companies scrambled and they handed this stuff over to their events teams and their IT teams to pivot, right? So that people could continue to meet and do all those things. My argument is that those guys have done an amazing job. I mean, we've seen a lot of events be able to move online. The question is are they totally optimizing the opportunities? And then that gets you into what I call the insights you can gain from what we call platform theory and moving to a platform strategy. And this has to do with the network effects. So one of the things that's really interesting is when you do a broadcast and you see a lot of these events now, there tend to be one way, right? You have speakers speaking, but you don't have the participants connecting. But there are a wave of new technologies coming in. And I mentioned one in the article called Twine, which allows for periods in which people can talk to each other who are participants, which I think is a really cool thing. Those are what we call in platform theory indirect network effects, or what we call same side network effects. So technology is changing so that you can take advantage of that. So I think that the idea that the events, or the technologies and the way that we've experienced these virtual events is going to get better and better and better. There are literally hundreds of millions, not billions of dollars being invested right now in a whole stream of new technologies. And so this way of interacting and getting together is just going to get better and better.
Can I just bring in Simon from Dublin? It's midnight there, and this is a really good example. This is a really good example of what we're talking about. Hello, Simon, and thanks so much for staying up for us. What are you thinking about what we're doing here as it relates to the idea of where global events will go?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Great to be here, everybody. The event space, as you know, Keith, I'm heavily involved in. I'm actually running a summit week this week, and it's all online. But there's some interesting things caught my eye just from this side of the world. And one was, I'm sure people have heard of Web Summit, and you might have heard of a gentleman called Paddy Cosgrave. And Paddy Cosgrave set up Web Summit in Ireland quite a number of years ago now. And I think the first one we went to was about 400 people. And it got to the point where he was filling 40,000 people at an event. And there wasn't a venue really capable to hold it. We've since built the convention centre in Dublin, Ireland. But he did a deal in Lisbon, and I think he went 80,000, 100-odd thousand. But the news that caught my eye, which you might find extremely interesting in relation to this topic, is that he's now licensing his conferencing software, and his first customer is the United Nations. That was in the national tabloids here in Ireland only in the last sort of 48 hours or so, which I just thought was incredible. And last year, in 2020, Web Summit went completely online for the first time in its history. It always sort of streamed the main stage or a couple of stages. So if you didn't quite have a ticket, which start off this year at $850, 850 euros for Lisbon, where it's going to be held this year, later in the year. And they go up and they trade hands for a couple of $1,000s, which isn't unusual in a corporate ticket space world, but quite expensive for a consumer show for the average person. But the point I was going to make, real quick, is that last year when it went fully online, they had 104,000 people attend their online conference.
Oh, 104,000.
Which made it the largest online business conference of 2020, I think. That's what's being reported over here. So I think it's certainly here to stay. But even Web Summit, even the founder of Web Summit, Paddy Cosgrave and his team, are looking to go back to a real person event later this year. Yeah. So it's back to this discussion of blended, hybrid, and I can talk a little bit more about it later on, but I just thought I'd throw that in because I think those are some staggering numbers, and the fact that he's now reselling his software and his first customers, the United Nations, just shows what a shift we've seen in the last 12 months.
Well, hold that thought. Let me bring in Subject from San Francisco. Thank you so much for calling in. I know you've been waiting patiently. Let's pick up on the idea of the hybrid model as it relates to real life events. Most of us love to go to events in the city and hang out with our buddies. But what do you think the hybrid model will look like as it relates to these 5 points? And I'm very interested in your thoughts here, Subject.
Yeah, I think the events were already hybrid even before COVID, but they were skewed more towards physical presence, and we had the virtual sort of element, if you will, which we recorded the content and we shared it and we
Yeah.
used it later. We mined it. We kind of kept it alive for next n number of weeks. That's what marketers do, right? They want to prolong the life of the content and use that for lead gen and whatnot. So I think now after post COVID or during COVID, actually, you can say that we are going to conduct in-person events. Like I hope starting July, August, AWS reInvent is already slated to happen in Las Vegas. If you go
In
to this
person in July.
in person, no, not in July. It's in October or November, I think. So
Wow.
almost towards the end of this year. Andy Jassy, which is who is CEO of Amazon Web Services, he's becoming CEO of Amazon soon. He wants to do it in person, and I always thought that we'll have a snapback effect, to be honest with you, because I'm sick of staying at home. I want to meet people. I want to shake hands. I want to sit closer to people, because there's so much we can convey over the camera. Like part of the body language, comes over, but some part, just leave.
Sometimes it's nice to just be in a room with people. Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
But don't you think that we may have a situation where I'm starting to think of this, where I think I will attend 3 in-person events next in 2022, but I probably will also attend 3 or 4 virtual events. And so I'm going to choose depending on where it is, what my schedule is, what it costs, and things like that. So I'm starting to think more of a blended model.
Yeah.
I think it will be blended model. Like it will be hybrid in every which way. It will be hybrid for within one sort of conference, like a virtual as well as physical.
Can I just ask, will it be a guy on a stage, a person on a stage with screens behind them like here, or will it be a room of people watching a screen? Which do you think it'd be?
I think it'll be like people will be there and present watching that person presenting, and the people who cannot be there, they will be off. Okay, by the way, we can't forget the economics of these events and talk in the absence of economics of these events, right? So how you conduct these events and who pays for it, how much vendor takes on, and is it a money-making thing for somebody, or is it just, break even, or they lose some money, but they gain a lot of, business from it? So there are different types of events, right? Some are vendor.
Let me bring Doyle in on this, because there's a couple of things I want to pick up on, Doyle. We have been talking a lot about the idea that online events are missing something. They're missing this idea of being able to connect in real time. The feeling of being in a room with people is unmistakable, but it's hard to replicate online. And Peter had alluded to the fact that there will be this sort of hybrid model. What do you think is coming, and more importantly, what's missing and what's coming?
I guess what's missing is the remarkable, I say it a lot, a remarkable digital experience worth remembering. And I think a lot of times we feel that fatigue, we feel that Zoom fatigue, we feel that, there's something not right here. And I think it's because we've focused too much on the technology in terms of just replacing, conference online or conference in real life to conference online. And we kind of said, well, we need to do this. And it was a technology solution, whereas I think we really need to look at how do we actually create those hooks, those pieces of engaging content and unique processes and understanding. And that's kind of what we've been doing on the show, is demonstrating those specific things that can actually work a lot better for an online version of a conference. Don't call it an online version of a conference or a summit. It can be much, much more than that. And if you look at the access to it as well, like, to me, okay, yes, we are kind of cooped up and stuck and that sort of thing. But honestly, for a smart business that realizes that, hey, I can actually connect with my audience around the world And I like how you have it, Peter. I've talked about it. It's distance is irrelevant, time is irrelevant, and space is irrelevant. And I think you called it like asynchronous and that sort of thing, which is fundamentally what we're talking about. I can have an audience around the world at a specific time, obviously, at a specific place, but they can be wherever they need to be able to connect to that. And that is a very powerful proposition for a business that says, I don't just need to have a business customer around the block or, across the city. I can be across the state, across the country, across the world, and I can have my audience there checking in with me as I bring them through that experience.
I just want to allude to a few things that are happening. Hello to our friend Bob, who's actually having a bit of trouble accessing the article. I've DM'd you that article, but also I might get one of the guys here to put that in YouTube and I'll post it.
I put it on YouTube, Keith, but it doesn't seem to be coming up for some reason. So
okay,
I did put
so
the
that's
link.
the first.
Yeah,
I've DM'd him that. But second of all, I want to bring in Simon again because he mentioned a phrase here called pandemic teleportation. You've got my attention now. What do you mean by that? And are we picking up on the same sort of vibe here that we can't travel, but we can, in a way, still communicate? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using the term pandemic teleportation or digital teleportation a while. And I know it will appear to you, Keith, because it has sort of elements of Star Trek running through.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Trekkie for sure.
But for anybody who's familiar with the ability to beam or zap into different parts of a universe, I have really benefited extremely from being able to join global events at the click of a keyboard key.
Yeah,
I found that in a lot of cases, not all, the pricing has also been more realistic because it has been an online environment. And I think the other social advantage to that is that it's opened up events for people who maybe couldn't afford the ticket price, the price of the airline, the hotel for the week. And it's been able to educate more people who've been able to get involved in more discussions in a global context than people who maybe had to just do that one or two conference a year. You can literally go to a conference now on a weekly or a monthly basis if you've got the time and the energy. And the thing that's on screen at the moment, there is a saving there in terms of not only your own time and sanity for anybody who's been on the red eye and done the junkets to and from the conferences, but they can clock up a lot of air miles, a lot of personal miles on your own personal human clock, and they also cost a lot of money. But I'm looking at it more from a digital teleportation and allowing other communities and maybe people who haven't experienced these kind of conversations to be able to access it at the click of a button. And I'm really interested in seeing how we can drive that more, not just the usual people that the company pays for the ticket and the airline and they get to go.
Can I bring Lippy in on this? I want to give everyone. I'm very conscious of giving everyone a turn, and look. I'm personally, as an Australian who has 0 cases, and let's just be very clear what we did there. We locked ourselves in a room for 100 days. It wasn't easy, but we did it, and we won. And Lippy, I know you're frustrated that people won't do it, but can you see some of these technologies that we're embracing here helping for people to stay away from each other for a period of time to let the virus die down? Have we got a health-related solution here that can work for people?
Yeah, well, Keith, let me first of all applaud all of Australia and your neighbors to the south there, New Zealand in particular, to actually declare the entire nation, or in the case of Australia, the entire continent, virus-free. I mean, look, I'm actually Canadian, but I live in the U.S., and it's embarrassing that the world's wealthiest nation, most resource-rich nation has floundered the way that it has. This is not a political statement. It's purely from a medical and public health standpoint. Yeah. It's really shameful. So yes, technologies like this are, of course, have been a lifesaver from a public health standpoint. But, at the same time, I also want to, echo what some other people have said to a certain degree, which is that we are by nature, human beings, social creatures. Now, socialization can be enhanced through technology, but we also need that in-person kind of connection talking, verbal body language. As a doctor, I can tell you, I'm limited when I can't do a physical exam, if I can't lay my hand on a patient's shoulder. Now, that said, I do virtual visits, televisits on phone and by computer. And actually, a lot of my patients like the convenience of it. They like the fact that they don't have to drive and park and wait in waiting areas. So there's pros and cons with this format. I'm a fan of it, but I like the convenience of it, but I also really miss talking in person. By the way, before the pandemic, I worked full time as a doctor, but I also was a speaker nationwide. Almost every week, I traveled to a different state talking about addiction and homelessness, pain, trauma. I loved it, but to the point of various other speakers, it was expensive. I mean, it was exhausting. So I don't miss all of that, but I do miss the interpersonal connection. So, I think we're going to have to find a hybrid, and I'm totally fine with that.
Okay. Well, I think that's really the key point. There's a couple of health-related issues here. There's a couple of functional issues. Let's bring Peter back and feature this article once more. What does the 5-point plan offer the person that really wants to connect in person? How do we somewhat bridge that gap with the online model?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it depends on company policy, right? I mean, we turn to our organizations we work for to determine whether or not they're going to pay. And my sense is that a lot of them are going to say, hey, you can still do the business you need to do by a virtual meeting, not necessarily in person. And if you going to do an in-person, you really have to justify why you need to do that. And so what I think is going to happen is a segmentation. And so we will have in-person events, but they're going to have to be, rigorously justified why you need to go to Europe for 2 days. I mean, it's hard to rationalize that. Now, maybe if you're going to one of these really big events like the Web Summit, and you're going to have a lot of side meetings and other business associated with it, it can be rationalized, but it made sense. So I think companies are going to realize they need to have a strategy around this, and one that makes sense. And that's, the point of this article, which is to say, hey, make this part of your overall digital investment. And think about it. Think about it in terms of the digital capital that you're building, and where do you want to invest your time and effort? And, just learning, perusing what a vendor has in China around their new product offering, being able just to look at it online and talk to them and hear their pitch, that'd be fine. But if you really wanted to engage in a joint venture, you probably want to fly over there and do that.
Let me pick up on one of the things that we talk about, and that is better ROI. And now the key question about ROI is ROI for who? If people love events and you want to hug people and have a coffee and sit in the cafe and share a meal, then the ROI of a virtual event might be not as good. But if the ROI is based on how much upsell you get from an expenditure point of view, and Irene and I talk about this a lot, and I want to specifically pick up on this, and I want to run the room on this idea. So the question is, who gets the ROI? The person in the room that might go to an event might not get as much enjoyment from an online event, but the person running the event might get enormous benefits. So let's start with Irene and the idea of online events and ROI. What's your take on ROI from both points of view, the consumer and also the client, the person running the event?
Sure. So Peter, from a digital strategy standpoint, and I'm sure Doyle can also add to the discussion, every company, when you're planning your budget, your investment, right, you have to be very mindful where this money gonna go to. So with all the funds, sometimes it's hard to measure. And those events, the big ones, right, the big trade shows, they're enormously expensive. They used to be. Okay, this will change a little bit with hybrid model. But point is that it is most of the time it's not a good business to run the event unless you really lead generation company that really knows every step along the way. I haven't met such company, and typically events, it's a mixture of awareness and it's a mixture of kind of sending your message out, and there are a bunch of reasons how to justify the reason for the event. So with virtual capabilities, look at us now, of course, right, to Keith's point here, with virtual capabilities, it will be harder to just throw money away on real events unless you can demonstrate to your business, right? Can show the results right there on number of deals are closing, but guess what? Deals are being closed online now as well.
Yeah.
So Doyle, maybe you can pick up that baton in terms of digital strategy for companies and how virtual event is the instrumental part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what a lot of businesses may not be seeing, sort of that revenue potential picture. And when you have an event, there's revenue opportunities beyond the event, basically, and you have to look at your product ecosystem, your services, how you're actually offering those, and not to make it like a commercial or a pitch fest or anything like that, because that's not the way to do it either. But there needs to be sort of a better look at how can we actually utilize events, how can we leverage events for the business or speaker, consultants, whatever, overriding business activities. And to me, that's sort of looking at it more strategically. It's like, okay, yes, we're having events, but how are we actually using that event to further our business, to get people to buy into our ecosystem, to understand our digital assets and feel that that's a part of what we do as well. So I see it, hybrid from a customer perspective, but also hybrid from a business perspective, combining events with a financial purpose. And instead of having a very, very expensive event where you get whatever 10, 20,000 people, you can actually leverage that a lot easier online and then bring people into your digital ecosystem. Well,
let's bring Simon in on that, because he's quite fascinated by the fact that there is a shift towards medium-sized events and also a shift towards what we now call social audio, Clubhouse and or Twitter Spaces and whatever comes. So what's your take here compared to the big one in Portugal? Are you noticing there's a shift towards smaller, more niche type events more often? Is that what you're thinking, Simon?
I think to what Doyle was just saying, the ROI and what you get out of the event from both sides, the attendee and the event organizer, is critical. But from a smaller perspective, if you talk about social voice, and I'm sure we've all tried Clubhouse at this stage, and some of us have hosted Twitter Spaces, but it's incredible how people seem to be, after they've experienced it for a little while, the big mega rooms, they're sort of moving down into the smaller medium rooms because they don't just want to be a participant or a spectator. They want to be engaged in a meaningful conversation that's authentic and isn't just somebody selling to them. And I think I can see that from my own event this week, the Think Global Forum Summit Week, where we've specifically only ran it for a few hours a day, but we've run it for 5 days as opposed to a big long event. And some of the sessions are quite closed, as in, we've limited the amount of people that can come to it because it gives people an ability to feel part of a community. And that ROI that Doyle was talking about, I think it's more than the financial ROI. It's, does a person feel fulfilled that they've invested their time wisely? Do they want to be part of that community on an ongoing basis? Will they return to that event? And sometimes the medium-size events, or even the small intimate conversations, I know there's lots of people watching this, but there's only a few of us here speaking. You can have a more meaningful conversation and pull people in and out. You don't really get that from you might as well be watching Netflix as going to some of the big conferences, right? You end up with a thinner wallet and sore feet if you go to some of the really big ones. So that's my take on it.
It's good. Exactly. Thinner wallet and sore feet. We can make a song out about that.
If it's too big, you might as well watch television station or listen to talk radio or something.
You
like
lose
that.
the intimacy.
You absolutely. So on Clubhouse, like if the rooms are 5,000 people, it's like I don't really want to listen to a room of 5,000 people because I'm never going to actually be part of this conversation, right?
Right.
So it's like I'm ditching it.
Let me just run the room. I want to give everyone a turn. Subject, I know you've been waiting very patiently. What's your take on this idea of sharing in a smaller capacity? We've all heard the Clubhouse story where you can have 5,000 people in a room and no one gets to speak except 2 or 3 people. What do you think about the idea of smaller rooms? So we've got 6 guests, and a moderator. Is that really the future of these types of events you're talking about that might even start this year?
No, I don't think so. I mean, life is not black or white, it's gray. I mean, it's hybrid every which way. As I said earlier, I love some big rooms on Clubhouse, right? Because I'm learning a lot. And also I can raise my hand to ask a question and they pull me on the stage and I can talk. I have spoken to Michael Dell. I have spoken to Morgan Reeson on Clubhouse, which they're hard to get to. You know, that was the lure of Twitter early on.
Yeah.
I can reach to the CEO of Amazon, and we can exchange the tweet and talk to somebody. I think it's that. There's a lot there, right? There's economics, there's psychology, there's politics, there's lot of stuff, right? So like, who gets to go to events? I mean, I think in the previous couple of conversations, I think last year we talked about it, that it's a perk to go to San Francisco from London, or from San Francisco to London, for people to go there, spend money in the hotel room and take their spouse with them, and then it's kind of holiday plus learning and all that stuff, right? And I think that we can't just say that the virtual events will replace what we have in physical events. Besides having like this, like, okay, I mean, I cannot participate because I'm in a big room. The similar thing is there as well. But you talk to your peers, you shake hand with your peers from different companies. You learn a lot when you're not in the sessions. You go to dinner with somebody. We all know, actually, when we are not like forcing ourselves to learn, we learn more at that time. Like the most of the innovation happens at the water coolers of the companies, or a walk in the park and stuff like that. And then that's why we get a lot more ideas in the shower. There's no magic there because we are not trying to think about something. It's just naturally comes to our mind. There's a flow to it. So I think physical events will come back, and they will be there, but we will do more of virtual events, and they will be micro in nature, not macro. And Peter talked about network effect earlier. I think that's huge. We bring hundreds of vendors to big events. Like if it's a cloud event, you will see so many vendors. There are different tiers of vendors from different countries, and the governments sponsor their countries to bring their startups to the cloud sort of events here in the US. I've seen that people from Israel, people from German under one umbrella. These are German startups. These are Israeli startups. And I think, I believe we will do virtual because that's where technology is going with the virtual reality and augmented reality. We will maybe do the Halo lens thing, and we can see the person from all sides and all that stuff. But it's still not there. I was at CES and I saw all those technologies, the future where we're going. But still, I was not impressed with it. Like, it can't replace the physical.
Okay. Well, look, I want to bring Lippy on this because I want to get the human story behind Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces. I'm not sure if you've tried them or if you've got an opinion on the psychological approach of not having to turn your video on. But first things first, have you tried Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces? And what do you think of that idea of social audio as a solution here?
Uh-oh.
We got you. I'll unmute you here. There you go. We've lost you. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Well, you're the typical reality. Oh, good, you forgot to mute. I've heard of Clubhouse, and this is my second or third time using StreamYard. So my comment about the technologies is that it'll favor many people, but there are going to be others that will be turned off from it. But I will say there's actually data now showing that, particularly with school children and younger people, the Zoom format is not effective, right? Because children and the developing brain benefits not just, this is why school matters. School doesn't matter just for the actual didactic education, but the socialization that happens by interacting with other school kids and the teachers. And to Sajid's point, at recess, during break time. This is why meditation and mindful practice matters. It trains your brain to be in the present. So again, as with all things in life, everything has pros and cons. Technology, I'm delighted. I would never have met this global community if it wasn't for technology, but we need in person as well. The hybrid format is what's going to be really interesting, and how organizations, universities, hospitals, other conferences, like how they're going to navigate that, it will be very interesting. But a hybrid, it will be the way to go.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring Simon in on this, because a couple of things, and I'm navigating this behind the scenes. It's like driving a racing car, this show. So Simon's made a couple of comments. There's two things I want to mention here. One is that travel broadens the mind. And one day I will go to Dublin. I promise you that in this lifetime I will go to Dublin. I will go to that Viking house that was built in 1108 and, run by Eric the Beard, Eric the Red, or whoever it was, some Viking dude in the 11th century. But, there is something to be said for traveling. But I want to ask Simon two questions. One is, what is the value proposition of the physical in-person stuff? As Lippy said, we need the interaction of research and hanging out in the cafe. But second of all, can we do some of these things virtually? And I want to give you an example. I went to Italy in 2018, and I can tell you for sure, I would have paid 200 euros not to go to the Vatican. I would have paid 200 euros to sit in a room and be walked through virtually, because that experience to me was painful. 100 euros, 1,000 people in a room a mile long, and 8 hours of my life I just want to forget about. Can we do some of it virtually, and can we do some more physically? What do you think?
Well, listen, I hear you. I mean, if you try it, go and try and see the Mona Lisa in the Louvre in summer season. Go and try and get into one of the museums in Amsterdam during the busy periods. Forget it. So I'm with you on that. However, as you know, I working with a lot of these sort of big brands and companies around the world who are trying to reach into many different languages and cultures and communities with their products and services. It's very hard as humans. We do need that social interaction. We do need that human interaction. There's so many people at the moment would just like to be able to hug somebody. Because they're missing that interaction. School children are missing out on grandparents. And Lippy was discussing there the importance of the school learning environment. But I think in terms of travel broadening the mind, I think there's nothing truer than when you're in a different culture that speaks a different language, or you're in a different economic environment maybe to one that you're used to. It's the fastest way that we learn as humans, and I think it is vitally important that we don't lose that. However, I do think there's going to be some kind of analysis that we all do, where we say, well, this year I'm going to do X amount of events, and I'm going to really think about which ones I'm going to invest my time in going to, because I think there's a reason to go to it, and the ones that I'm just going to go to in person, like your Vatican example, Keith, where it's going to be easier. And look, we watch sport on TV. You could buy a ticket and go to the stadium, but sometimes it's just easy to kick back and watch it. So I think it's a decision based on many factors. I think they're both equally important and both equally have a place. But travel broadens the mind, and I don't think we will ever forget that as a species. How we mix and interact on an international scale is critically important.
Would you agree, Peter? You've got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I actually think that the virtual can actually help you decide whether or not to make that decision to go to the physical location.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys have checked out Amazon Explore, but Amazon now has a marketplace for only virtual experiences, and it is pretty damn cool. I mean, if you're interested, there's one thing you can sign up to, only $29. You can go and visit a miniature orchid farm in Costa Rica. Now, I may actually be interested in going there, but the fact that I can go and for $29 schedule a tour of that virtual orchid farm may induce me to say, wow, that was amazing to see online. I really want to go see it in person now.
Yeah.
So I think that the same with these conferences. Before I decide to spend $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 to go to an event, I might want to go virtually first, check it out, and then maybe the next year go in person. So I think that the virtual actually opens up a tremendous opportunity to explore at a reasonable cost in a way that we couldn't before. And the boss may actually decide, hey, I'm not going to send you this year. You got to prove that this thing is worth it. So why don't you attend virtually this year? And then next year we'll decide whether or not you go. In fact, the fact that I've met you guys today has just, now I know you a little bit. It'd be fun to kind of meet you now in person. Now, if you had just called me up and say, fly to New York because tomorrow we're going to have this, I don't know. So I think that these things can work in really cool ways together to actually help people make better decisions about how to spend their time.
It's a combination, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally, Keith, if I can interject myself in this conversation, because I'm very interested in, I met this year, 2020, right? I met Doyle, Sarbjit, Keith, all online, okay? And since then, we have daily conversations with Keith, with Doyle. We talk with Sarbjit sometimes through mutual friends. And this is amazing, okay? So as much as I love physical and real life experiences, I love traveling. I love going to Europe in particular. Can't wait to get there. Never been in Dublin, but that's my next yes.
So somebody mentioned before this word community. So part of the reason you go is because you decide to join a community, and deciding to invest in a community is a big decision because it takes resources. So the virtual actually helps you decide, hey, the Clubhouse thing, hey, going to go check this out and see whether or not this is a community I want to invest in. So I just think the technology in the virtual actually expands. In fact, what's the name of your conference? I actually, now the Think Global, now that I've heard about it, I did not know about it. I actually am now intrigued. I'm not going to fly to Dublin necessarily, but I'll definitely want to check it out and then decide, hey, is this worth me investing further in that community?
Tell us a bit more about it. Simon, you've got the floor now. Tell us a bit about what...
I'd love to hear.
The combination. Peter's just given you a great example. He's heard about it online. He's got a bit of a teaser now. He thinks, well, I haven't been to Dublin for a while. I wouldn't mind going again.
That's the coolest part, is that you can actually decide, Pete, you can decide now that I'm going to go to the sessions that are, I think, starting in like 10, 12 hours kind of thing, or late evening for me, but you can decide now. You don't have to necessarily.
Right, exactly.
Ticket sales.
Well, and then I love the fact that you're extending them. You didn't put it all in one day. You've now spread them out. So I can engage, because I can't take a whole day. I've got stuff to do, but I can jump in for an hour or so.
Yep, and and from the speaker standpoint, we talk to a lot of common friends now, digital friends, and they all say one thing: for them to speak at those events, they used to travel, right, for days and weeks and recovering from those. Right now, the particular leader, she speaks at 3 conferences on one single day. How is that for engagement?
Correct,
In 2019, there was 1 week where I was in 3 states in 1 week and had to go back to clinic right after. So I talk about being sleep deprived. I mean, I was not practicing what I preach as a doctor. So more virtual events would certainly help people that are in the regular speaker circuit for sure.
And on the emotional side, because I'm very big on empathy and really human side of it, I do talk about technology a lot on my show, Soga Talks. But today, let me share one moment. I interviewed the person, Transform AI CEO of the company. We met last week. Today, we had a conversation about 45 minutes. I am so energized by this talk right through StreamYard, Keith. So thank you for pointing me to that technology. So there's
a shorter window, isn't there, between the idea and fruition?
Absolutely. It's shorter time, everything faster. But the moment the human interaction we had, now I made another friend. Now Lee Coulter, his name, he wants to join the community that I'm building, that things we're talking about humanity and tech and humanists in general. So look at that.
Well, have you guys participated in Lunch Club? So that's a matching service that allows you to decide, hey, this Friday, I don't have a plan, so I'm just going to sign up, and then they match you, and you can spend an hour talking to somebody who has a similar interest. So you can accelerate your ability to do networking through these technologies in pretty cool, I think, efficient ways that can really, and they're like a superpower that we didn't have before.
And do they use AI, or does someone physically?
Yeah, no, they use AI. You know, they basically scrape your LinkedIn and other social media to come up with the tags, and then they match you with like-minded based on what you say you're interested in.
Do you do a bit of that, Simon? Have you thought of this idea of matching people up in the networking? Is the networking part of your story too?
Yeah, so we developed a separate community forum for after the event to carry on the discussions for that very point, because the event has a finite time, as Pete was saying. You know, we did split it up over the week. And I think, Doyle, you were talking about this earlier. It's not just the event, it's what happens after it. And that's normally where a lot of events fall down, because after the event, nothing happens because everybody's
they jump on an airplane, take off.
Exactly.
Right?
Everybody, like, if you're the last speaker on the last day, nobody's coming because everybody's running for the airport, right? So yeah, we have done quite a bit of that. And to Pete's point earlier, the thing that we learned early on, painfully, I mean, we weren't geniuses, but we tried to retrofit the events into the digital world, and it just didn't work. You have to re-engineer it and come at it a different way and think about what your audience wants. And, you know, as Irini was saying there a second ago, you know, or Lippy was saying, people who are speaking at these events, they have short windows and they don't have to commute. So it is a much more shorter package time frame. And there's been lots of studies by Google and people like that about how much attention people will pay in an online environment. But I've been to Google physical events where if you get there late and you don't get into the main auditorium, you go into a separate Google room and you watch it on a screen anyway. So I mean, what's the difference, you know?
Oh, my Lord.
The last time I turned up late for a Google event, I tell you, because I might as well have been watching it on my phone, you know?
With a bunch of other people moaning, right?
Right.
Yeah,
well,
I think...
keep it going. I'm trying to moderate as best I can to give everyone a turn, but I think, Subjit, I really want to pick up on your fascination with specifically Clubhouse, and if indeed you're using Twitter Spaces, because that's an audio-only format. And we're now talking about the idea of meeting lots and lots of people online and going to events on video. But what does Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces offer us, because it's not video, that we can't get with these video conferences that are very common too?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of prep work you need to do to video, right? You need a camera. You want to make sure you don't look like you took a shower and then you're wearing what you're wearing and all that stuff, right? And what's your background? But with audio, I can be making my dinner and talking to people. As long as I'm not, the utensils are not making a lot of noise and stuff like that, I got into the habit of muting myself if I'm not talking. Even today, I'm doing that right now here. I mean, like, everybody is so disciplined on Clubhouse to mute themselves when they're not talking, and it creates certain kind of discipline to talk with other people with respect, and you get to practice, your narratives and you learn a lot from other people, how they talk, how they put forth their comments, and I'm amazed. I mean, I've met some amazing people on Clubhouse, and what happens is, like, quickly, as soon as somebody talks, and you know the substance of the content or their knowledge, like this, we are humans that we can sense it like that. And they say a couple of sentences, and you look at their profile on Clubhouse, and quickly you take a look at their Twitter profile, and then from there you do the research online. Okay, this person has done some substantial sort of body of work they have produced in my field of sort of my domain, if you will, and then you quickly follow them and schedule a one-on-one or a Zoom call and stuff like that. I think it's amazing. People are willing to share a lot when they are in the social setting. I think and I think it's much more I don't know, friendly to the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, as compared to what we are doing right now here. Like right now, people can't raise their hand who are watching and say, okay, I want to ask a question, and we bring them up and it's okay, include them in there. Like they can't do that over there. I think they have done a good job. I have used Twitter Spaces as well. I got access like 3-4 weeks back. I can't figure that out, to be honest with you. Like I go online and I sit there. Somebody will join, and sometimes people come and they leave very quickly because I'm not talking yet, and I can't talk to myself, alone. So it is weird.
You got to work on your monologues.
I know. I need to.
Are you using Petty? Do you see the audio, social audio, fitting into this model moving forward?
I just think there's just an amazing diversity, and what happens is you just get smart, and you should scan so that you're recognizing that each one of these modes of communication have different attributes and work in different ways, and they become a toolkit or this capability that you have. And if you're a super networker, you should be familiar with all of them because they all have their pros and cons and pretty cool attributes. So,
well, you, Doyle, have said that the advantage of Clubhouse is that it's a lot easier for you to just turn it on and listen in on the fly, and you find that quite freeing, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, the big joke with the Zoom meeting is what? It's like, do I have pants on or not? Take your guess. Whereas with Clubhouse, it's like, hey, guess what? I might be a secret nudist. Not that I am. For those who are, it's totally fine. But the fact is that, you can kind of take it wherever you want. You can take it into a different room. You can be in the garage. You can be outside. You don't have to, as a guy, put on concealer and get rid of my bags under my eyes and make sure my hair is nice and trim and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot less mental energy just to talk with somebody, and I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's some psychological reason, but it's almost freeing, literally, because you don't have that heavy weight of how do I look, how do I, is my background safe? Do I have something, kind of really weird in the background that somebody might go later? It's like, hey, what was that? Right? So I think it's an opportunity to really simplify.
Because we've chatted a lot about this. Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces is a new thing which doesn't have video. And so you don't have to do this. You don't have to buy a webcam and a light and a special thing that blurs out your background, and you don't have to put a fresh shirt on and have a shave, or manscaping as we now call it. So, what do you do? I'm getting quite good at the manscaping.
No, we don't want to hear about your manscaping.
So, what do you think, Irene? Do you think that Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse has got a place? I'm specifically interested in your thoughts because you found it initially quite hard to navigate to cool places or places that are value to you, yeah?
Absolutely. So every time I go to Clubhouse, it reminds me that I was invited there by Doyle. Speaking of digital friendships, okay? So, yep, absolutely. So, more fruits, more friends, more flowers right around us. So, I would take whatever, Keith. I like to manscape myself sometimes. It's fine by me. But at the same time, yes, when I'm grocery shopping, yes, I still go to the stores. I love physical experience of it, all right? Guilty as charged. So, yes, I do listen to Clubhouse there, navigating the aisles and, yes, picking my stuff. So, point is, yes, interesting discussions there. I totally get what Sarjit is saying, because by the volume of the voice, sometimes by the emotion in that voice, we can tell a lot. And yes, of course, expertise, you cannot fake it, right? It's either there or not. So I do leave rooms rather quickly when it's become really just boring, because some people just there to talk. Yep.
And there's whole videos about people just talking for the sake of talking, aren't there? There's whole videos and whole sort of
exactly. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't control our talking process. Okay, those who love the sound of their own voice Okay, we're not gonna stay alone in those rooms. But all I'm saying is this is very helpful, on my walks outside. Okay, I do get to know what other people are doing, and this is what networking is all about. So yes, let it all flourish. But to the point of Sarbjeet, how do we get audience involved in this type of conversation? There are more platforms, and Keith is always experimenting. So there is cool one, Riverside.fm. You're running
Riverside,
live stream, and your audience can join you if we decide to do so.
Yeah, I think that's good. But I think the one of the I noticed the most resemblance to the real world actual conferences is Clubhouse, because there's a hallway. When you go in there, there are rooms there, right? So you can say, okay, I want to go into this room or that room. Like that's what happens when you go to big conferences. Other than the keynotes, we want to join the sessions, and they're running in parallel. There's a session on like how you scale your cloud. There's a session on how do you do Kubernetes and whatnot, right? So like we pick and choose, and here you can pick and choose, and the searchability is very a key aspect of content consumption and content creation. Like can people search for you, and can people who believe in what you believe in or what you're talking about, they have the same interest, that can they find each other? I think that is there. And in video it's a little bit less, I believe, but at the same time there are so many factors, like schedule, like did you schedule it, is it on the spot, and
I have a question for you. Isn't this sort of like the early days of YouTube when it was free and there was a bunch of stuff and you could just roam around? I just worry Clubhouse is going to get commercialized, and so we're going to see, ways of monetizing, and there are going to be ads running. I don't know. Do you think it's going to remain pristine and sort of exploratory, or is it going to turn out like YouTube and others that have gone down the commercial path and just everywhere they try to monetize?
Can I butt in there? I might butt in there and answer this question. I noticed yesterday that Twitch, to me, looks a little bit like YouTube. So I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on how Twitch. And can I show your photo, Peter? Can I show your photo?
Oh, yeah, sure. Why not?
So the very interesting thing here is that Pete has a Twitch account and is the DJ online and does
that is actually me. Yes.
He does a live streaming video show on Twitch.
That's actually me DJing a after party of a very large tech conference. So
there it is.
Yeah. So
what has Twitch done?
Are we gonna do DJ today a little bit, like on this?
I'm DJing tomorrow night. So if you want to see me DJ, feel free to join me. My DJ handle or name is DJ Provost. So it's a little bit Provost. It's the academic dean of a university. I have a PhD, so I decided to go with a little tongue in cheek.
The DJ doctor.
Yes, but I just to mention, when I started DJing 5 years ago, I had reached a certain level of my professional career. When I started DJing, I got no respect whatsoever. And it was really hard for me to actually get gigs, to get any DJs to respect me. And that opened my ideas to, or at least realization that building a fan base is really hard work. And it's a skill, and it's something you have to pay attention to, which has led me into all these things we're talking about today. So, I try to test the boundaries and explore new spaces, but I think this whole idea of building a community, how you get people to join you, how you deliver value back to that community are really, really big issues. And frankly, I've learned that and explored it through the DJ world. And I bring it back to some of these more, event and professional world. But I think, just this whole idea of building community and how do you sustain that is something that's really big. And these technologies are allowing people to build huge communities. I'm just shocked sometimes at the number of Twitter followers some people have. I'm just like, how do they do that? I don't know.
Yeah,
it takes years and years. Actually, somebody was asking me yesterday. I tell them that I have some discipline. I reply to every tweet which is thrown at me, and I never retweet an article posted by somebody before I read it. I never commented before I read it. So I spend a lot of time on it, but then it is very rewarding because my feedback is very genuine. I'm not just saying, "Oh, I love it," you know. So,
right.
that's
Well, that
very
means you're a good, I don't know, good community. People respect and get value back from you, right? Whereas, anyway, so I just think that's a big thing. And then that bleeds into this question about events and virtual events, where you can build really powerful communities with using these technologies and extend in ways like we're doing today. We're multi-continent, right? We've got this amazing network that we've connected today. So.
Can I just add something that in response to something Peter just said? Like his early frustrations in building a community really resonate, or a fan base resonates with me. And kind of to echo on what Sarabjit said, like I was so frustrated in my inability or my slow pace at, say, building a Twitter following. Many of my friends that are media experts, social media experts, including Sri Srinivasan and many other people said, Lippy, it takes patience and in constant engagement. Yes. And what Sarabjit was saying, like, I don't respond to every single tweet or post that I get, but I mean, I engage. I'm constantly putting out content every day. If not my own original content, I'm putting a tweet, I'm responding, I'm replying, I'm liking. So I'm just engaging. Today, I just wrote a Forbes article and I posted it, and I'm sharing it, direct messaging it. So, you know, like it's hard work. But it pays up. Appearing on national television has helped with NBC. That helped. but it's more than that, right? Because then you can just stagger. You can a stall, I should say. So it takes a lot of work, and it's consistency.
I would totally agree with that.
That's my next thing, to be on CNBC and Bloomberg. I already have lined up my sources for that, so that's cool.
Awesome.
You know, the thing I love is that, you know, here we are, and I would argue that many of you have never met each other except on today's show. Now, how cool is that? That this random guy, me, in Melbourne, an hour from the city, sitting in his lounge room or bedroom, or in this case, my media room, you know, has organised a person in Atlanta, New York, Connecticut, San Francisco, Dublin, and Perth to communicate with each other. And who knows what you collectively will do with that? You know, Sarabjit might go to New York and meet Lippy, and then they might go on the telly. You know, Peter might end up going to Dublin.
It was leadership. You actually exhibited leadership, right? Yeah. And excitement, enthusiasm. I felt both things when you connected with me, and I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. It's a testament to exactly, Keith, your leadership and your ingenuity, and you're a social creature. You really are a social guy, as most, I think, Australians are. And you leveraged your knowledge and interest in technology and with people, and you made this happen. But to your point, though, Keith, this is doable. It really is. You're making it look easy, but it's not. It's hard work, but it's doable.
Yeah, actually, I really appreciate, Keith, what you're doing. And Doyle, actually, I was joined you a few times, and I'm like, anytime you call, I'm here. You know, just like I love what you do, and you guys put a lot of thought into it. And talking to Simon and Lippy and Irene here, like I've spoken to a couple of times. Peter, I'm meeting you first time, and I'm impressed by your work on your blog. And the demand for economists at Amazon, actually, you know, I was talking.
Oh, you read that?
Yeah. I just glanced through it because I spoke to a Penn State professor who is economist for Microsoft Cloud, and he wanted to pick my brain on it because I talk about cloud economics a lot and consumption economics. And because I'm an economics major, I dropped out of PhD. I didn't finish mine when I moved to US from India in '94. So I'm an economist at heart, and I've practiced technology for the last 25 years. So I love your work. And
Amazon is cornering the market on PhD economists, not masters or undergrads. We're talking PhD economists. So I estimated in that article, I don't know, what was it? They're spending millions of dollars in that asset, but it's working for them.
Asset, Peter?
Well, some of them are focused on AR. Some of them are on. They're just actually Amazon has grown by about 300,000 people just in the last 2 or 3 years. So they've actually been hiring a lot of economists to study their workforce. So, and they hire PhD economists to do this, which is mind blowing, right? I mean, most companies won't spend that amount of money to do that.
Let me just pick up on a few questions we've had from the floor and from the gang. Can you, Peter and Lippy, give us the name of your article so people can Google that? And mate, I've just pointed out the actual article here for the Forbes article for Lippy. But what's the name of that article? I might just I might go in and check that. So it's getting to 10 past the hour, and we've been going 40 minutes, and we could go another 40, but I just want to give everyone a chance to run the room. Can everyone just give maybe their top 5 ideas related to what's happened today, or even just a couple? But Peter, you start because you were a guest of honor.
Okay,
tell us a little bit about what's going on, and maybe a couple of takeaways from today.
Okay, well, I'm actually going to add something. What's really interesting is the economists now are studying what we call excess savings. And they estimate that in the US, and this is true worldwide, is that people haven't had the opportunity to spend on hotels, travel, all this stuff. So there's this pent up savings. In the US, they estimated it to be $1.6 billion. So a really interesting question is are we going to see a surge in spending coming out of this next year? Or are people going to hold back and not spend? And then how are they going to spend it? Are they going to rush out and want to go to all these events live? Or are they going to say, hey, I like this technology and I'm going to save this savings, for all sorts of different reasons. And so there's this big question about what's going to happen in terms of spending going forward next year. Because
we can't buy things. We can't spend our money. It's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Well, no, we can. I mean, you can go back to restaurants. They're going to be open again. So, there could be a surge in travel. There could be a surge in going out. So it's a really interesting question.
Let me pick up on what you've just said there, because I read this really great report that Twitter did about the trends they've noticed in the last year. And there's a couple of different trends, but the major 3 trends that I'm tracking, because I can do something about it, is that there is a huge trend towards online escapism. I can't travel. And you know what? I really do want to go to that orchid farm in Costa Rica, but I can't fly there. So I'm going to invest in this digital escapist day where I go to the orchid farm and I hang out with the owner, and that's worth $29 to me. So there's a huge trend towards digital escapism for 2 reasons. One is life in your town might not be so pleasant. And second of all, you can't physically go to a place. That's the first thing. The second trend, and I want to run the room on this, the second trend is there's a huge trend towards virtual events, again, because we can't travel overseas. And there's a realization that maybe this is a good thing now. And the third thing, to pick up on your point, is there's a huge trend towards online shopping. If you can give me a link and deliver it to my house, I will buy your stuff. And the businesses, and Doyle specifically talks about this, the businesses and the organizations that say, look, we know you want the stuff. You just don't want to come here to get it. So if you can facilitate an online shopping experience like Amazon, then I will buy it. I want to buy it. I want to support you. And this is happening with restaurants being able to book online as opposed to lining up. And does that pick up on what you're saying there, Peter, that there is a sort of a void of technology for people being able to spend, and there's a trend towards maybe finding some ways to help people spend their money that they want to buy things with?
Now we're going to have another session on this, but I would point out, so quite a number of companies have announced that they're scaling back on their brick and mortar retail establishments.
Yeah.
But they're going to keep their flagship stores. So if you live in New York, you're still cool because Nike and Under Armour and all these companies are going to still have their flagship. But if you live in the heartland or Perth, you may not have the same access to kind of retail stores. So then the question becomes, how are companies going to engage those people? I actually think the virtual is going to become really interesting.
Yeah.
Because those companies are still going to want to engage those people, not necessarily with brick and mortar, but they're going to have to find ways of doing that. And so another article, I haven't written it yet, but it's on Nike's fitness app. There are now 70 million people on Nike's fitness app, and it is free. And they have a library of, things you can do from 10 minutes to 90 minutes. Now there's just a ton of different ways they can leverage that to drive the sale of their product, which are shoes and clothing. But by joining that community, going back to this idea of community, you're going to get exposed because Nike wants you to stay on their app and in their environment. And so they're going to want to do a whole bunch of different things, which give those customers exclusives, give them fitness tips, and they're going to want to introduce them to athletes that inspire them. Yeah. And because they have 70 million people on that app, they can get any athlete they want in the world to inspire their community. So there's going to be this move for companies in particular to want to establish these communities and feed them with a lot of engaging content so that people want to stay within those communities.
Let me pick up on that. I know Lippy's got to go, and I want to just thank you very much for being on the show, and I want to give you permission to go if you need to go, if it's getting late there. But what are your thoughts, last-minute thoughts, on the idea of fitness apps or health-related apps that allow people who may not be able to communicate in person to be healthier?
Yeah.
If indeed it has a business benefit, but just from human health.
Yeah, I'll take that even a step further and just broaden that to just technology and social media in general has not only transformed my personal, but also my professional life. I've been able to interact with people literally around the world and academically in terms of addiction medicine, health, mental health. And yeah, this pandemic has clearly enabled people who are unable to go to gyms. They're now using these apps that are free, that are YouTube videos, you name it. It's safe. But let me just also add that, and I've been, the conversation has reinforced certain things for me. Technology is going to just expand as far as how we interact with one another globally, locally and globally. But as humans, even the most introverted human is social by nature and needs some degree of in-person contact. I'm telling you, even the most introverted person. So we, from a health standpoint, from a public health standpoint, we need this pandemic to end so we can resume life for the health of our nation, our economy, not the globe. So I'm all for technology, but I'm also all for seeing live events, Broadway, musicals, sporting events, dinner parties. You know what I mean? We need that as human beings.
Yeah, I totally agree. But let me bring Doyle in on what I want to pick up on, the two things that Peter said, because this is what we talk about. You've got this free app from Nike, who's a big company and can afford to fund a free app. And you've got a library of workouts that people are thinking, hang on, I've got a 10-minute workout during the week and 90 minutes for the weekend, but I need a pair of shoes. Who am I going to get those from? Because the app allows you to buy a new pair of shoes for your 10-minute workout and a cool pair of shoes for your 90-minute workout. Is this where you see the sort of confluence of technology and online shopping going? Have you got a thought on that? Because I know we do talk about it a bit.
The lines are definitely being more gray, and I think that's a good thing, because typically we're really sick and tired of the pitch and the advertisement and that sort of thing. But if you bring them into more of a community, you're really looking at, you're building that trust with people, you're building that understanding. And Nike is whatever, it's a $500 billion company or whatever the case may be. It's huge, right? But I think they really get the message, and that's probably something that others can learn, is that they're really, and don't get me wrong, they still spend a lot on traditional advertising, but what they really are doing is they're building that community, that tribe from the ground up. And then they're sort of presenting their assets in the ecosystem that you can come in, you can, group together, you can find other people, you can do workouts, you can do all this kind of stuff around their products, right, around their value that they're typically providing. So it's definitely merging.
And are you finding that businesses Are you finding that businesses are adjusting, or are you still finding that obstinance with the smaller businesses to just not embrace the new changes?
Yeah, the smaller businesses, honestly, they don't quite get it. Like during 2020, during the COVID crisis, for the most part, like the digital adoption was about 25% globally, and even after all that went on, it spiked at about 35% again. You know, some places it obviously went a lot better, but it spiked at about 35% and then dropped down again. But typically, the businesses that said, "Hey, wait a sec, we really have to change. We really have to adapt and evolve what we're doing here. We have to build out our digital platforms, our ecosystems, our assets, that sort of thing." They saw 5 to 10 years growth in those 9 months. So it really becomes, what are you doing? Like, look what's going on around you, and kind of adapt and change now. Otherwise, you will be, at the bottom of the pile as things develop as well. So it prepares you for what's to come next. We are seeing that shift. And yes, in some cases, it is the big corporations that are saying, "Hey, this is the way that things are going. You better, start up and listen."
Well, can I tell what I might do? It's coming up to an hour and a half. I'm going to run a little bit of a pattern interrupt for the people that are too polite to put their hand up to say that it's getting late there. So if you need to leave because it is getting late, this is your little excuse to say, "Look, Keith's giving me permission. It's getting late. It's 1 a.m. and I really do need to get to bed, or I've got to get some dinner on." So I'm going to run a bit of a pattern interrupt, and then we're going to come back and do a 10-minute wrap up of what's happening on the show. And so there it is. You've had your chance. So now we're going to run the room.
That's it.
Too much fun. Too much fun.
You've had your chance to go and leave. So I'm going to run the room. I really do appreciate you, Peter, for coming on the show, and I really want to have you back on again to talk about this idea of digital assets compared to the idea of physical rooms and the combination. But thank you again for coming on.
Sure.
We are going to talk NFTs. You're going to talk.
No, we have to talk about that as well. Yeah,
that's the crazy sort of trend right now is NFTs. Next time, maybe.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will do is I didn't do this today because we had a little bit of trouble, but we have got a QR code, and there it is in place of Doyle's face. There is a QR.
I've become a QR code. Look at me.
QR code, but here's the bigger version. That will actually take you to the Facebook group, and the Facebook group URL is Better Than Real Life Events.com. So we are indeed trying to get a big community going on there, because we know that
just tested it. It works.
Did it work? Did it work? Yeah. So there it is. We've got a QR code for there it is. It takes you to the event, which has got that lovely blue color, which is our background. Simon, because it's late there, I want to give you a chance to wrap up and also tell us about your event and what did you get from today? What are the takeaways you've got today?
So I think, well, look, if anybody's interested in my event, it's just thinkglobalforum.org. That's the best place to go to, thinkglobalforum.org. But the thing, or just the hashtag is Think Global Forum Summit Week. So that's probably the best way to find out what's going on there. But we've, a speaker opening it up, Vice President from Condé Nast. We've got fantastic guys speaking on Friday, Mark Pollock, the first unbroken by blindness athlete who raced to the South Pole and won Commonwealth medals, a great inspirational speaker from Davos, the World Economic Forum, TED, all the, you name it, he spoke at it. But aside from what I'm involved in this week, the things that I've taken away from this conversation are just maybe a couple of other thought starters, because just a couple of other recaps, because you're asking earlier about how you would summarize it. And I think there's been an interesting move from Spotify, where they're moving the terminology from subscribe to follow. And I think that feeds into community. It moves away from payments and commerce to communities and following and streaming in a big way. And, the way that even podcasts are rated is based on downloads. And that model it's changing rapidly to a streaming only world. I think the direct to consumer, back to what Peter was talking about, the major brands have got this down. You know, you talk about Apple or Nike, the major brands are already direct to consumer. You know, whether they have a physical bricks and mortar store, it'll just be the flagship of stores in major cities, but they don't need it. They've got the dollars, the ad spend, they've got the celebrity A-list endorsing their products. And as long as they've got a relatively clean, authentic online purchasing experience, their revenues are just going to go up and up. I'm very fortunate to have visibility into some of those big global brands from some other work that I'm involved in. And their businesses during the pandemic have absolutely skyrocketed. And I know some companies have really failed, but particularly in the tech sector, particularly in this direct-to-consumer model, a lot of businesses have really seen massive growth. The other thing, just to wrap up, is these small and medium-sized companies, I mean, if they haven't got their agile digital strategy built out now, they really need to get on with it, because it isn't going away, you know, and people, I don't know if, I mean, I have children, and my children had turned their retail experience into, they might go into the shop to look at the pair of running shoes or the trousers or the blouse that they want, but they would then buy it online with their phone. They're only looking at the price and trying it on, and their whole digital experience was buying it from an e-commerce perspective. So I think that whole retail shift is it's already changed for the next generations coming through. So I think we're going to see more changes there, back to this showroom versus a retail experience. Potentially live events we touched on, and I think from I mean, I like art and I like theatre, probably art more than the theatre per se. But I've attended those, you know, I've paid for virtual tickets for digital experiences to get somebody to walk me around an art gallery. And it's a bit like back to your Vatican story, Keith. It was much easier than being part of a huge crowd and having to shuffle through 4 stories of an art gallery, when I almost had this one-on-one experience with somebody that knew a lot more about the art than I did, taking me through it, you know. And I could see it in lovely 4K render, you know. It was a fantastic experience. And being able to watch a play and time shift it, and that's the thing I wanted to fish on just in terms of my wrap-up. In the same way that we've time shifted our media consumption, I think there's an interesting topic, or not for today, but about time shifting our event experience. Because if you're not there live, you kind of miss it. The whole webinar thing's kind of done. We talked about Clubhouse and social audio, and you've got to sort of be there and drop in. But there's something about time shifting events as well that seems to be growing in popularity. I need to catch up with it later and see what was talked about, and let me just do that on my own time scale. So that's from me anyway. I hope that gives you some
insight. It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Away. And Subjeet, do you want to bring it home as it relates to what you've talked about in social audio and also Clubhouse? But this idea of time shifting, how does the idea of being there, listening live, differ to the convenience of being able to listen later? Have you got some thoughts on that? Have you seen some trends around that?
There's no shortage of thoughts here, so I can spend an hour talking about this.
Well, let's wrap up.
I'll keep it brief. I'm just scaring you. I think that there was a proximity advantage people had. Like you're in New York, and then that means you're closer to financial industry. I'm in Silicon Valley. I have certain advantage over people who are sitting in Dallas, Texas, and stuff like that. And that's eroding right now, with the digitization of the world. We are digitizing everything. There's a book called Exponential Organizations. I think they picked the wrong title for the book. It's a very thin book. You should read it. Like when anything which gets digitized, it grows exponentially. And we tend to not understand that phenomena as humans, as our mind doesn't think in exponential sort of ways, right? Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to convey. And the second thing is, as Simon says, that there's no going back. We never went back on technology. I belong to a small village, and I was born and raised in a small village in India, and we had these oxen to these plowing the field. My father used to do that, and then we got a tractor. And my grandfather said, "Don't get tractor; you will you will be like under this big loan from the bank and all that stuff. And my father fought and he bought the tractor. And my grandfather kept on saying that all those people who have tractor, they will get rid of them and they are going to be bankrupt and we will go back to what we were doing. And we tend to think all the time, even today, like we will go back to the way we were, we will go back, but we never do.
We never go back.
Digital is here to stay. You can never undo technology. So keep that in mind and sort of like just write on some, piece of paper and hang it there. Social voices, I think, is gaining from the other sort of miscellaneous points I make. Social voice is gaining some traction. I think it's cool little format. It's an add-on to existing sort of digital formats, I believe. I don't spend too much time on it. It's just in the evening, actually. If you notice, the rooms get filled in the evening during a couple of hours, and then people sort of disperse. It's like in my village, like there used to be a tree, and people sit under the tree and play cards, and then talk about all the issues in the world. And that's how it is. Yeah, it's social gathering, and then you disperse. And then NFTs, it's an interesting trend. You should watch that. People are sort of creating coins around their content, and they're sort of prolonging the life of the content. You can sell your tweets if you want these days.
Kings of Leon did one this week, didn't they? They were the first band to release an album as an NFT.
Yeah, NFT. Yeah,
Which
I
has
think
a really cool word associated with it. What was it? Non-fungible tokens.
Yes.
Yeah. Non-fungible tokens, yes. And I think the VR that's the next big thing is the VR. I mean, like I talked to some folks here in the Bay Area, and Robert Scoble spends a lot of his time. He wrote books on it. So I think VR is the next frontier after this thing, which changed our life forever almost. It's going to be the glasses, which will take us to the next level of reading, learning, doing stuff remotely. We need to move away from the smartphone somehow at some point.
Well, look, we've hit the hour and a half. I'm gonna wrap it up. I want to actually just give Doyle some kudos here. He has a really cool program called the Digital Pathfinders. Now, I normally finish with just a little thank you video, and which I may still do. But Doyle, do you want to just tell us a little bit about this program that we've got, which is the natural extension of what we've talked about here? And then I'll play your cool video.
Oh, thanks, Keith.
So that we can really end it on a nice positive note.
Thanks, Keith. Really appreciate your time as well for organizing us and keeping us headed in the same direction. But the Digital Expedition League of Pathfinders is really saying that we kind of need to redesign how we approach digital, and we have to look at it as from a digital experience point of view, but we also have to look at it that it's not been easy. And I think maybe when we look back over, the last 25 years that the internet's been around, like, why have businesses struggled an awful lot? And I'm talking about, the small to medium-sized enterprises, not the big corporations that can just throw, money at it type thing to solve the problem. But we really need to redefine how we look at it and treat it more like an expedition where we do have to know certain things. We have to show that digital leadership. We have to understand where we're going and how we're going to get there. But it's not just getting to the summit. It's actually coming back. And that's why the whole metaphor of, are you a digital pathfinder, getting to the summit is only half the battle. It's actually maintaining that afterwards as well. So.
Well, let me just let Irene bring it home because she was the inspiration for the article today. And then I'm going to finish with I promise I'm going to wrap it up. I've got to get better at finishing. I'm going to wrap it up with Doyle's really great video because we're going to start a new show after Easter on this theme that people need to embrace the digital world and that it's not going away. So, Irene, what are your thoughts before we play the video? What are your thoughts about today and where's this all heading?
Today was fantastic, Keith. So I'm not the first one who is telling it in this room. So I'm envisioning Renaissance, how the French are saying, pardon my French over here. So yes, all this energy that was contained in that room, that everybody locked down. We are a little luckier in Connecticut. I was walking outside all year 2020, so I cannot stop bragging and promoting the fresh air for our mental health. That said, I'm envisioning renaissance of arts, of culture, of things we deprived ourselves. Okay, all these fantastic dancers and artists and actors and producers. They need us. They out there, putting their plans together, and we're there to support them. They want to enjoy life the better way, not how it was, but even better. Meaning, back to Peter's point about hybrid. Right? I want to research that play. I want to research that new thing that's coming out, but I want to get in the audience and experience it firsthand, a little more selective than in the past. So wrapping it all up, Keith, virtual events, they're here to stay. And what we're discussing with Doyle here, Keith Doyle, you're fantastic in a way of communicating to this world of the remarkable digital experience and better than real life events. I think right now we have the sense how to make it better, and let's show the way, and let's just that's example. Here we go, because we're emotional beings and we know how to connect. Okay, online, hybrid, physical. Thank you, Keith, for everything you're doing. It was tremendous today.
No worries. Well, let me just wrap up and say thank you to everyone who's taken part. We're going to have these shows until Easter, and then we're going to come back with a really cool show after Easter all around this idea, probably on LinkedIn Live. So thanks again, everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.